In other stupid news, apparently there's now a boycott being launched against Starbucks. So why is this Starbucks boycott being launched? Well, because there was a tape that came out in Philadelphia of two black men who were apparently arrested. This is clip 8. Two black men being arrested because they supposedly asked to use the restroom. And they were told that they could not, or they were hanging around I think it was that they were hanging around the Starbucks for like 15 minutes waiting for a friend to arrive. And the manager called the cops on them. Here's the tape of it. You can see the police show up. And they're talking to some of the people in the establishment.
What did they get called for? Because there are two black guys sitting here meeting me? Yes. Well, what did they do? What did they do? Did someone tell me what they did?
They didn't do anything. I saw the entire thing.
They didn't. What did they do?
Nothing.
So the cops were called, apparently, for trespass. And they took these two guys away. The guys were later released, and Starbucks has apologized for the entire incident. The boycott Starbucks hashtag has been trending on Twitter. Apparently, there are a lot of people who are legitimately going in and just yelling at people at Starbucks. Like they're just going into Starbucks and yelling at the baristas at Starbucks, which is completely useless. The men were accused of trespassing. They said they were simply waiting for a friend before ordering. The video shot by customers is very hard to watch. The actions in it are not representative of our Starbucks mission and values, said the CEO of Starbucks. He said the basis for the call to the Philadelphia Police Department was wrong. Philadelphia's police commissioner on Saturday defended the arrest, saying his officers had to act after Starbucks employees told them the pair were trespassing. It's not the police's fault, right? The police come and they're told somebody's trespassing on private property. They have to make the arrest. I mean, they can't sit around and quibble over who made the call, why the call was made. They initially make the arrest if the people refuse to leave. These guys apparently refused to leave. Philadelphia's police commissioner said, of course, that they were asked to leave and that they did not. In a video statement, the police commissioner, Richard Ross, said store employees called 911 to report a disturbance and trespassing. When officers arrived, Ross said staff told them the two men had wanted to use the restroom, but were informed it was only for paying customers. The pair reputedly refused to leave when politely asked to do so by employees and officers, he said. If you think about it logically, that if a business calls and they say someone is here that I no longer wish to be in my business, the officers now have a legal obligation to carry out their duties, and they did just that, said Ross. They're professional in all their dealings with these gentlemen, and instead they got the opposite back. And then Ross, who, by the way, is black, said he was acutely aware of implicit bias. He said, we are committed to fair and unbiased policing. Anything less than that will not be tolerated in this department. The two men were released after Starbucks said they were no longer interested in prosecuting them. Starbucks, of course, apologized for all this, and now they are pledging that they're going to give all of their baristas sensitivity training, implicit bias training. First of all, implicit bias training is completely useless. Okay, the studies on implicit bias training demonstrate that implicit bias itself is not a good gauge. Implicit bias, for those who don't know, if you've been in college recently, I'm sure you've taken this test. An implicit bias test is you sit at a computer and they show you a series of faces, black faces and white faces, and then they show you on the other side of the screen a series of words, good, bad, angry, smart. And then they see how fast you click the button to associate the words in the image. So if you are slower to identify smart and black and smart and than you are for smart and white, this means you are implicitly biased. The problem with IATs, implicit bias assessment tests, is that they're not statistically significant, meaning that they're not repeatable. I can take the test twice and get two completely different scores. You can train for the test, and there is no evidence whatsoever that so-called implicit bias in this way actually factors into real-world decision-making. So even the people who created the implicit bias test will acknowledge that there is no hard evidence that even if you fail an implicit bias test, this means that you're a racist in your behavior or in your dealings. And yet now we're going to do implicit bias retraining. It's just stupid over at Starbucks. Also, one of the problems that I have with some of the tapes that are being released, that wasn't the only tape that was released. There was another tape that was also released, this one from today, in which a black man was at a Starbucks in Los Angeles, and he claims that this is on Hawthorne. Okay, so let it be known that the area around Hawthorne is heavily minority. Okay, this Starbucks is in a very heavily minority area. So I really doubt that the manager at this particular Starbucks has never seen a black person in her establishment before. What you're going to see in this tape is that the guy who's tapes a white guy coming out of the restroom, and then he asks the white guy coming out of the restroom if the guy was asked to buy anything by the manager. And then he goes to the manager and he says, well, I wasn't allowed to use the restroom if I hadn't bought anything. And the lady says, I'm going to ask you to leave. And the guy refuses to leave. This guy posted the tape, and then he suggests that the Starbucks manager, who, by the way, is Asian, is a racist. So here's what that sounds like.
So I would like Starbucks right here on Redondo, on Artesia, and Hawthorne. This man right here said he hasn't made a purchase yet. He's in line to make a purchase, and you guys had gave him the code. right? Isn't that what you did?
My business right now.
No, this is not your business. This is not your business.
Private business.
This is not your business, though. Okay, you may be the store manager, but you're not the. You're not in charge.
You're actually not allowed to be anymore. You need to leave.
I'm not allowed to be in here anymore.
Yeah,
Why? You see, they're so mad. Why are they upset with me, Weston? What did I do?
I don't know.
I just tried to use the bathroom like you did, and they gave it to you. Is it my skin color? 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 I couldn't use the bathroom, but Weston could.
Amen.
I feel it may be my skin color. Hey, but this is about to be on social media. It's about to go in the shade room.
Okay, so Sean King posted this, the columnist for the New York Daily News, and he suggested, of course, that this is just demonstration of more implicit racism on the part of employees at places like Starbucks. And here's my problem with tapes like this. We don't have the whole tape. Okay, we don't know what happened in the 10 minutes prior to the tape. All we know is this guy walks up to the manager and then he suggests that he's not being allowed to use the bathroom because she's a racist. At one point, she starts to say, no, I'm actually asking you to leave because, and then he cuts her off. So how are we supposed to know why the manager did this? You know, we don't know what happened in this original store in Philadelphia. And there are a couple of witnesses you see on that tape that there's a white guy who says these black guys weren't doing anything, but we don't know when he came in. We haven't heard from the manager. We don't know what the manager had to say about the situation. Again, Philadelphia is a very heavily black town, so I can't imagine that Starbucks has never had black patrons before. I can't imagine that blacks are barred from the Starbucks over there. All I'm asking is, I'm suggesting that we may not know the whole story here. Maybe we do know the whole story. If we do know the whole story, then the employee should be fired, right? But if we don't know the whole story, then why are we jumping to the conclusion that Starbucks employees are essentially racist, especially in areas where they're dealing with black folks all the time? Is it possible that the people in Philadelphia sat down at the table and asked to use the bathroom, and then when they were told they could not until they bought something, they just refused to leave, and they just stayed there? Is it possible that they're acting threatening toward the manager? I don't know any of this, right? It's all speculation. It's possible that everything I'm saying right now is completely incorrect, but you don't know either, and neither does anybody else. The media don't know. Presumably the manager knows. Presumably the people who were involved in the incident know. But we haven't heard from the manager. We still haven't heard a defense from the manager of exactly what happened inside that Starbucks. And now we're going to retrain thousands of employees across the country, including black employees across the country, in implicit bias without knowing the whole story. This is one of the things that just drives me up a wall. If you're going to suggest that there is implicit bias, if there's some sort of evil racism rampant throughout American society, at least give me the whole story. At least I have to have the whole tape. There are racists. Okay, and we've shown some of those racists over the past couple of years on this program doing overtly racist things, and we have called them out on it. But if I don't know the whole story, am I going to jump to the conclusion that this guy's telling the truth? That conveniently, the very day after a national controversy involving a black man not being able to go to the bathroom in a Starbucks, another manager across the country, on the other side of the country, did the exact same thing to a black man? So I think that that's a little convenient for the narrative. I think it's a little convenient for the narrative. I don't think this is a massive, widespread problem all across the country. And by the way, when my kids have to go to the bathroom at Starbucks, I buy something at Starbucks. And if they asked me to leave a restaurant, I would leave a restaurant. But again, it's, I think people are apt to jump to conclusions that please them most rather than waiting for all the facts. As I say, if the testimony of these folks is true, then the person should be fired. You called the cops on someone for no reason, you should lose your job. However, I want to know the entire story. And this is, again, one of my pet peeves, is people using selective evidence to back the idea that America is systemically racist or systemically sexist. The media have decided that it is the end of the world that Sean Hannity did not disclose his relationship with Michael Cohen. Again, I think Sean should have. Do I think it's the end of the world? I really don't. But here's the CNN panel yesterday going nuts over all of this.
I think we're seeing how this really tight-knit universe works. And if it is right that this wasn't ever about a third party, this was about Hannity calling up just seeking legal advice from Michael Cohen once in a while. How can you be going on the air every night talking about Michael Cohen, defending the president, and have this relationship you're not telling your viewers about? That is certainly sketchy at the very least.
Well, you're either someone's attorney or you're not. And you either have attorney-client privilege or you don't. That's what I don't understand here.
Does Fox News know, or did they know that he had this relationship? And if they didn't know that, I mean, he hung them out to dry as well, exposed them to a challenge to their credibility, which is not a good thing for any news network. But
we're not talking about a straight reporter. We're not talking about Bret Baier. We're not talking about Chris Wallace. We're talking about Sean Hannity, who's been maybe the most partisan host on behalf of President Trump since the election cycle. So, again, I don't think the impact here is tremendous, but the left uses any excuse in order to try and knock hosts off the air. You saw a couple of weeks ago they tried to knock Laura Ingraham off the air because she said something untoward about David Hogg, the Parkland survivor. And now they're trying to knock Sean off the air on the basis that he has conversations with Michael Cohen on an infrequent basis, apparently. Representative Jerry Connolly, who's a Democrat, he says Sean Hannity should be fired over all of this. Of course, he thinks Hannity should be fired every day of the week.
And now what we learn is, as he's defending the president's lawyer on television,
he has a conflict of interest, an ethical conflict of interest. He is one of those clients. He never revealed that. And I think that's a big stain on certainly Mr. Hannity, but also Fox News.
So what do you think Fox News should do?
I think they ought to fire Sean Hannity.
We are so far down the rabbit hole at this point. Does anyone remember where this started? This whole thing? This whole thing started with an accusation that the Trump campaign was colluding with Russia. What in the world does Sean Hannity, being a client of Michael Cohen's, have to do with Trump and Russia? What does any of this have to do with Trump and Russia at this point? Right? This is how far afield we have gone.